It's time to man up. Real men don't cry. There's no room for weakness. Don't be a wimp. Swallow those feelings. Put your big boy pants on. Don't be soft. Gain more power. Bench more. Repress. Hide the pain. Always fight, but don't show affection to other men. Don't be gay. Have lots of sex. Brag about it, but never talk about your problems. Never go to a shrink. Emotional incarceration. Department of Masculinity. Man down. Men are deteriorating from the inside. When I was young, I was told big boys don't cry. I learned to never be a mama's boy. On the playground, you fought if another boy called you a sissy. Years later, men told me to man up. These societal messages that started in my own boyhood included that to be a man, I must never be weak, show emotion, or be vulnerable. I was expected to suffer in silence, to swallow and numb the pain, detach from emotion, to drink more, and the fact is there's not enough beer in the world to numb the pain of men and help them love themselves. It was implied that I think less and feel less, to grow a pair, like growing a pair will solve every problem known to man. I was told to hide, but anger and violence were accepted and expected. The Mask of Manhood. In her brilliant work, The Will to Change, Bell Hooks writes, the very phrase be a man means suck it up and keep going. Disconnection is not fallout from traditional masculinity. Disconnection is masculinity. 500,000 men kill themselves every year in the world. 500,000. 75% of suicides in this country are committed by men. Mass shootings, a white male problem. On average, 24 people per minute are victims of rape, physical violence, or stalking by an intimate partner in the United States. Mostly committed by, you guessed it, men. My problem, 2 million men incarcerated in this country, 500,000 correctional officers making up the population of Chicago, maltreatment of prisoner prevalent, violence the norm, and toxic masculinity showing its most tragic and brutal face within the Department of Corrections. The danger of this mask of manhood, the results, the average survival rate post-retirement for an officer is 18 months. The CO has an average death rate of 58 years old. That's 17 years lower than the national average. The rate of suicide among COs is almost 40% higher than the rest of the working age population. In one study of 3,600 correctional officers, it was found that 34% of COs met the criteria for PTSD. That's higher than the military, by the way. And the prevalence of depression for male correctional staff was found to be almost 29%. In a separate study of over 8,000 officers, 29% of COs reported being seriously injured at work. 85% reported seeing someone else seriously injured or killed in the workplace. And approximately 50% of all officers in the sample reported that they rarely feel safe at work. Those officers reported a higher incidence of digestive issues, high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart disease. My innovation is to end the problem of maltreatment of the incarcerated by correctional officers by addressing and deconstructing the toxic and hegemonic masculinity that is fueling this problem among COs within the Department of Corrections. My innovation is aimed at officers. My program, Katabasis, is threefold. Katabasis, from the ancient Greek, defined as a journey downward, a sinking or gradual descent in search of understanding and significance. The three elements aimed at officers include training, alternative treatment, and education. Let me be clear about 2 points. One, obviously, altercation exists within the walls of prison among inmates, and the conflict is not always initiated by officers. Injuries of officers occur in some of those interventions of inmates due to inmate conflict. Secondly, all officers are not violent, harsh, or looking to punish prisoners. I work every day with a plethora of good officers that operate more like social workers than CO. Some who have never been in an altercation in over 20 years. They do tremendous work and their units are the calmest in the institution, which is populated by over 3,000 inmates and close to 700 officers. The problem is that they are few and far between. The first part of the program is providing an annual nonviolent, pro-social, and strength-based and motivational interviewing training to every officer that is grounded in trauma-informed care. This will be implemented in the yearly mental health training week. The second part of my innovation is hiring 2 social workers and/or counselors to provide mental health treatment and support for officers instead of the traditional talk therapy approach that has not been effective within the department. The iRest program will be the alternative treatment and intervention, which will be either on-site or online via phone for the privacy of the officers. Integrated restoration, or iRest for short, is generally practiced lying down or sitting up comfortably in a group or individual session. iRest is a research-based transformative practice of deep relaxation and meditation that helps the individual to become a fully functioning, integrative, and healthy human being. iRest is an adaptation of the ancient practice of Yoga Nidra, and was immediately integrated into the deployment of Health Clinical Center in 2003 to help manage PTSD among the military recovering from combat. The final piece of Catabasis is providing education resources, materials, and discussion for every new officer hired in the Department of Corrections in their new hired orientation. During this week, they will be provided the harmful societal messages of hegemonic masculinity that began in boyhood and give an opportunity to deconstruct the toxic masculinity and reconstruct a healthier identity that will help them become a more holistic officer in hopes of ending maltreatment of the incarcerated. As I close, toxic masculinity is causing damage and bloodshed within the department, literally. It is reinforced with the present American patriarchal system. The culture of corrections feeds this brutal masculinity. You don't have to go far to find voices that are addressing hegemonic masculinity. Recent Oscar-nominated picture A Star is Born and hit song Shallow featured Lady Gaga addressing Jackson, who's struggling with his own masculinity issues and alcoholism in the film. She asked Jackson, "Tell me something, boy. Aren't you tired trying to fill that void? Or do you need more? Ain't it hard keeping it so hardcore?" The chorus with lines proclaiming, "I'm falling, and all the good times I find myself longing for change, and in the bad times I fear myself." It is time to start reimagining masculinity. It is time to change the ethos in the Department of Corrections among officers. It was Bob Dylan that asked, "How many times can a man turn his head and pretend like he just doesn't see? How many ears must one man have before he can hear people cry? How many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died? Who will cry for the little boy, lost and all alone? Who will cry for the little boy, abandoned without his own? Who will cry for the little boy, he cried himself to sleep? Who will cry for the little boy, he never had for keeps? Who will cry for the little boy, he walked the burning sand? Who will cry for the little boy, the boy inside the man? Who will cry for the little boy who knows well hurt and pain? Who will cry for the little boy, he died again and again? Who will cry for the little boy, a good boy he tried to be? Who will cry for the little boy who cries inside of me? Let's kill the noise and end toxic masculinity.